Hi guys, today we are going to find out what if SpaceX never launched? Picture this, you're standing in a dusty Hawthorne warehouse in 2002, watching Elon Musk pace frantically as his dream of cheap space travel crumbles around him. The smell of disappointment mingles with industrial grease as potential investors shake their heads and walk away. You probably won't survive the technological stagnation that follows this moment. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment below with your location and local time. I love seeing where this alternate journey takes us around the globe. Now, sit back and let's dive into today's alternate journey together. You watch as Musk's initial $100 million investment evaporates into failed rocket prototypes and engineering setbacks. The Falcon 1 never sees daylight, and by 2004, the company dissolves into bankruptcy. The revolutionary idea of reusable rockets dies with it, buried beneath mountains of regulatory paperwork and risk-averse venture capital. You find yourself in NASA's Kennedy Space Center in 2010, where the Space Shuttle program limps toward retirement without any viable commercial replacement. The corridors echo with the footsteps of engineers who should be innovating but instead spend their days navigating bureaucratic maze after bureaucratic maze. Launch costs remain stuck at $10,000 per kilogram to low Earth orbit, a price tag that would make your wallet weep if you had one big enough. You witness meeting after meeting where NASA administrators discuss cost-effective solutions while simultaneously approving contractor budgets that would fund small nations. The Space Launch System becomes the agency's golden child, promising capabilities that won't materialize until the late 2020s. Without SpaceX's competitive pressure, there's no urgency to revolutionize anything. You observe how this monopolistic comfort zone breeds complacency throughout the entire aerospace industry. Boeing and Lockheed Martin continue their cozy duopoly through United Launch Alliance, charging premium prices for Atlas V and Delta IV rockets while innovation crawls forward at the pace of continental drift. You're transported to Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, where Russian engineers toast their unexpected windfall with cheap vodka and expensive champagne. The Soyuz rocket, a design older than your parents', becomes the undisputed taxi service to space. Every NASA astronaut, European Space Agency crew member, and international partner must humble themselves before Roscosmos and pay tribute in hard currency. You watch as Russian space officials gleefully raise prices from $20 million per astronaut seat to $80 million by 2015. They hold the keys to the only reliable human-rated spacecraft, and they know it. The geopolitical implications ripple through every international space agreement as America finds itself begging for rides to its own space station. You observe how this dependency creates a strategic nightmare during periods of international tension. When relations sour between Moscow and Washington, space cooperation becomes a political chess piece. Astronaut rotations get delayed, scientific missions suffer, and the ISS occasionally operates with skeleton crews because someone in the Kremlin decided to flex their orbital muscles. You find yourself in Silicon Valley boardrooms circa 2012, where venture capitalists treat space startups like radioactive waste. Without SpaceX's dramatic success stories to point to, investors see rockets as money-incinerating machines rather than profitable ventures. The phrase, commercial space, becomes an oxymoron that makes financiers chuckle nervously into their overpriced coffee. You witness how Blue Origin remains Jeff Bezos's expensive hobby rather than a serious competitor. Without the pressure of SpaceX's rapid iteration and public launches, Bezos's secretive approach yields little more than suborbital joy rides for billionaires. The company burns through billions while producing rockets that barely scratch the edge of space. You observe the knock-on effects rippling through the entire startup ecosystem. Companies like Planet Labs struggle to deploy their satellite constellations because launch costs remain prohibitively expensive. The small satellite revolution stalls before it begins, leaving Earth observation and communication advances trapped in PowerPoint presentations and prototype labs. You're floating aboard the International Space Station in 2014, watching crew rotations become increasingly complex diplomatic negotiations. Every astronaut launch requires layers of international agreements, currency exchanges, and political maneuvering that would make a UN summit look like a casual dinner party. The ISS partnership strains under the weight of Russian transportation monopoly. You witness how mission timelines stretch from months to years as NASA scrambles to secure Soyuz seats. Emergency crew returns become logistical nightmares when only one country controls the escape route. The station's research productivity plummets as scientists spend more time worrying about getting home than conducting experiments in microgravity. You observe the psychological toll on astronauts who realize they're essentially hostages to geopolitical tensions. Career space explorers find themselves pawns in earthbound power games, their return date subject to the whims of international relations. The dream of routine space travel evaporates into bureaucratic red tape and political leverage. You're sitting in a Starlink board meeting that never happened, watching executives from traditional satellite companies celebrate their continued dominance over global internet infrastructure. Without SpaceX's constellation threat, companies like Hughes and Viasat maintain their stranglehold on satellite internet, charging premium prices for dial-up speeds that would make your grandmother's modem jealous. You witness how the digital divide widens as rural and remote areas remain trapped in connectivity deserts. The promise of ubiquitous broadband from space becomes a pipe dream when launching thousands of satellites costs more than most countries' GDP. Tech giants like Google and Facebook abandon their ambitious connectivity projects, unable to justify the astronomical launch expenses. You observe the cascading effects on global communication and commerce. Without cheap satellite deployment, the Internet of Things revolution stalls, autonomous vehicles remain city-bound, and emerging markets stay digitally isolated. The fourth industrial revolution becomes a first-world luxury while billions remain disconnected from the digital economy that could have transformed their lives. You're transported to NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in 2020, where Mars mission planners stare at timeline charts that stretch into the 2050s. Without reusable rocket technology driving down costs, every kilogram to Mars requires the budget of a small nation. The dream of boots on red soil becomes a distant fantasy reserved for your grandchildren's grandchildren. You witness how the Artemis lunar program becomes an even more expensive monument to government spending. Without competitive pressure from SpaceX's rapid development cycles, NASA's contractors milk every milestone for maximum profit. The space launch systems per launch cost balloons to over $4 billion, making each moon mission a political battle over national priorities. You observe the psychological impact on a generation of space enthusiasts who grew up expecting to witness humanity's expansion beyond Earth. Science fiction becomes science friction as budget committees repeatedly slash Mars exploration funding. The Red Planet remains the domain of robotic rovers while human exploration stagnates in PowerPoint presentations and congressional hearings. You're standing in Beijing's Space Command Center in 2025, watching Chinese engineers celebrate their nation's emergence as the dominant space power. While America and Russia bicker over launch costs and political leverage, China's methodical approach to space development pays massive dividends. Their Long March rockets become the world's most reliable and cost-effective launch vehicles. You witness how China's Belt and Road Initiative extends into orbit as developing nations turn to Beijing for their satellite needs. Without SpaceX disrupting the market, Chinese space companies fill the vacuum, offering competitive prices and reliable service. The geopolitical balance shifts as space capabilities become concentrated in authoritarian hands. You observe the chilling implications as China establishes the first permanent lunar base by 2035. While Western nations debate budgets and environmental reviews, Chinese takenauts are mining helium-3 and establishing industrial facilities on the moon. The space race that America once dominated becomes a distant memory as red flags flutter in the lunar regolith. You're witnessing the invisible cascade of lost innovations that ripple through every corner of human technology. Without SpaceX's revolutionary manufacturing techniques, 3D printing advances crawl forward at glacial pace. The company's rapid prototyping methods that could have transformed automotive, aerospace, and consumer goods industries remain locked in alternate reality's vault. You observe how material science stagnates without the extreme demands of reusable rocket engines. Carbon fiber composites, advanced alloys, and heat-resistant materials that SpaceX pioneered for multiple launches never emerge. Industries from Formula One to renewable energy miss out on breakthrough materials that could have revolutionized their efficiency and durability. You watch as automation and AI development loses a crucial testing ground. SpaceX's autonomous landing systems and real-time decision-making algorithms that could have accelerated self-driving cars, industrial robotics, and smart city infrastructure never see the light of day. The entire technological ecosystem evolves more slowly without space exploration pushing the boundaries of what's possible. You find yourself in 2030, contemplating a world where the final frontier remains frustratingly final. Space exploration has become the exclusive domain of government agencies and military contractors, operating at the pace of bureaucracy rather than innovation. The cosmos feels more distant than ever, separated from humanity by layers of red tape and risk-averse committees. You reflect on how a single company's absence reshaped the entire trajectory of human civilization. Without SpaceX's disruptive influence, space remained expensive, exclusive, and politically controlled. The democratization of space access never occurred, leaving orbital commerce, asteroid mining, and interplanetary settlement as pipe dreams rather than emerging industries. You witness a generation that grew up expecting to see Mars colonies and lunar cities settling for Earthbound ambitions. The inspiring vision of humanity as a multiplanetary species fades into science fiction nostalgia. Space exploration becomes something governments do occasionally, expensively, and with great fanfare, rather than the routine commercial activity it could have become. The absence of SpaceX created a butterfly effect that touched every aspect of human progress. Innovation slowed, costs remained high, and the stars stayed tantalizingly out of reach. Sometimes the smallest changes in history's timeline create the largest ripples in humanity's future. Without one man's dream of reusable rockets, we remained earthbound passengers on a single fragile world, looking up at the night sky and wondering what might have been. What do you think would have been the most significant loss if SpaceX had never existed? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.